One photograph shows a car rolling through a sunny street. Another shows a mother sitting silently. Another captures one man stepping into the road with shopping bags. But years later, experts realized each frame was a turning point because of what nobody understood yet. If you like real history told through real images, subscribe to Rapid Rank. And let's start with the first photo, the car ride that looked like a formality. A camera catches a peaceful street scene. A car moves slowly through the crowd. No one looks alarmed. No one looks like they're witnessing the start of a disaster. It feels like routine protocol. This is Sarajevo, June 1914, and the man in that open car is Archduke Franz Ferdinand, heir to the Austro-Hungarian Empire. At the time, this visit was treated like a ceremony, a formal stop on a schedule, a public appearance meant to show stability. The photographs from that morning reflect that mood. People stand close to the street. Some watch, some barely pay attention. There's none of the tension we associate with the moment today. And that's the detail historians still point to, not what the photo shows. But what it doesn't show, no visible fear, no visible urgency, because almost nobody believed that a single event in Sarajevo could shake the entire world. In hindsight, that normalcy becomes unsettling. This wasn't a battlefield, it was a city street on a sunny day. And yet, within hours, Franz Ferdinand and his wife Sophie would be dead. The assassination didn't single-handedly cause World War I. Historians are careful about that. Europe was already packed with rivalries, alliances, and rising militarism, but it became the trigger event, the spark that made old tensions explode into mobilizations, and mobilizations into war. So when you look at those photographs, the strange feeling isn't just tragedy, it's proximity. Because the people standing there didn't know they were standing next to the end of an era. They were watching a car go by. And that's what makes the image haunting. The car is just a car. The crowd is just a crowd. But once you know what comes next, the photo stops being a record of a visit. It becomes a picture of the last calm moment before the 20th century breaks open. And it leaves a question that's hard to ignore. If you were standing there that morning, would you have felt history happening? Or would it have felt like just another public event? Because the next photograph proves something even more unsettling. Sometimes history doesn't arrive with explosions. Sometimes it arrives quietly, inside a human face. The photo that looked like a personal moment, until it became a national symbol. This photograph doesn't show violence. It doesn't show a riot. It doesn't show a disaster. It shows a mother sitting still. Her face is tired but focused. Her children lean into her shoulders, turned away from the camera. There's no speech, no banner, no dramatic action, and yet this became one of the defining images of the Great Depression. The year is 1936. The photographer is Dorothea Lange, working on assignment to document the lives of migrant farm workers in California. The picture is known today as Migrant Mother. At the time, Lange wasn't trying to create a symbol. She was documenting what she saw. Families living in temporary camps, surviving on unstable work, waiting for something to change. Just one family in one place, on one day. But what most people don't realize is how fast it moved once it entered the public world. The image circulated widely. And according to accounts of Lange's work, aid was sent to the camp soon after the photographs were published. That's what made it historically important. It turned a private struggle into something the country couldn't ignore. Economic collapse can feel abstract. Numbers, headlines, unemployment rates. This photo made it human. The photo became famous because it didn't ask people to debate policy. It forced them to look directly at the human cost. And there was another consequence. Once the image spread, it didn't just document hardship, it helped trigger a response. That's the strange power of a photograph. It can turn a private moment into a national alarm. And the next photo shows the opposite kind of turning point, one that happens in public, in real time. The man with shopping bags who stopped a line of tanks. For a second, it almost looks like a mistake. A man steps into the road. In front of him, a long line of tanks moves forward. Behind him, the street stretches wide and empty. The man isn't holding a weapon. He isn't shouting. He isn't even dressed like a protest leader. He's carrying shopping bags. The photograph was taken in Beijing on June 5, 1989, one day after Chinese government forces forcibly cleared demonstrators from Tiananmen Square. The world would come to know the image as Tank Man. What makes it so striking is the scale. a single person against military machines. And at first glance, it doesn't feel real because our instincts tell us the outcome. A person doesn't stop tanks, but in the image, he does. Accounts of the moment describe the tanks slowing down, trying to shift around him, and the man repeatedly moves back into their path. Then the line stops, and for a moment, the street goes still. That's the part that still shocks viewers, not just that he stood there, but that the tanks halted. In the moment, nobody knew if he would survive the next minute. And the most mysterious part of this photograph isn't the standoff. It's what we still don't know after all these years. His identity remains uncertain. His fate is unconfirmed. And that uncertainty turned the image into something bigger than one event. It became a global symbol, not of victory, but of refusal. Because the action captured is almost simple, a person refusing to step aside. It's also why the photo feels so different from staged, heroic imagery. There's no performance here, just a human being making a decision in real time, in full view of power. Without context, the scene could look like a traffic accident. With context, it becomes a summary of an era, a reminder that history isn't only shaped by leaders and governments. Sometimes it's shaped by one unnamed person who decides, for a few seconds, to stand still. And after you see a moment like that, it's hard to accept something else that historians know is true. Some of the most dangerous moments in modern history weren't photographed in the street. They happened in quiet rooms. The picture of a quiet room that changed how the world saw power. This photo doesn't show missiles. It doesn't show soldiers. It shows a room. A group of officials sit around a table. Some lean in. Some look tense. Everyone is focused on something outside the frame. At first glance, it's just a documentary shot of a meeting, but historians recognize it as an image from one of the most dangerous standoffs of the 20th century, the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962, a confrontation between the United States and the Soviet Union with nuclear weapons at the center. What makes the photo famous isn't what it shows, it's what it implies. Because outside that room, the world is closer to nuclear war than most people realized at the time. And what you're looking at isn't action, it's the moment before a decision. The camera can't show the tension in the room, but the photo is filled with it. That is one of the hardest truths about modern history. The most important events often don't look dramatic while they're unfolding. There's no explosion in the frame, no visible panic, just men in suits studying information, trying to decide what happens next. And the stakes of what happens next aren't local, they're planetary. That's what gives the image its pressure. You're watching people whose choices could affect cities, countries, and generations. The tension is invisible, but it's real. And in many historical accounts, the Cuban Missile Crisis remains a case study in how restraint shaped the future. Not through heroism, not through victory, through decisions made quietly, under unimaginable pressure, before the public understood what was at risk. So when historians return to this photo, they aren't just studying faces, they're studying something harder to photograph: power deciding whether the world stays intact. Because history doesn't always look like chaos. Sometimes it looks like silence, right before someone decides what happens next. Most historic photos don't look historic at first. They look ordinary, until time reveals what they were really capturing. And once you see that, you start looking at every old picture differently. For more real history hidden in real images, subscribe to Rapid Rank.